Once you sign this inheritance agreement, Adrian, you'll officially become Mrs. Caldwell's son," said Mr. Graham, the family's longtime butler. His voice was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of something more. "She has no children of her own. She's placing all her hopes on you. Don't let the old lady down." He handed Adrian a thin folder, everything he needed to seal his new identity. Inside was a terminal diagnosis: leukemia. 1 month left to live. A death certificate in waiting. Adrian took it without hesitation. "Tell Mrs. Caldwell that in a month, Adrian will be gone. Only her son, Alex, will remain." The car rolled down the highway, the golden light of the setting sun washing over the windshield. In the back seat, Adrian sat in silence. The sharp angles of his face were softened by a quiet melancholy as he stared out the window, watching the world pass by. No one knew he'd been reborn 3 days ago. In his past life, Adrian was abducted at the age of 7 and taken far from home. His parents, George and Martha, devastated by the loss, eventually adopted a boy the same age, Ethan. 10 years later, Adrian was found. But by then, his parents had already bonded deeply with Ethan. The reunion with their real son felt more like a formality than a homecoming. Adrian didn't complain. He just worked. In 5 relentless years, he built Hale Corporation into a public powerhouse, elevating the family name and planting their flag at the top of Blueport's elite. But then Ethan set a fire, literally, and someone got hurt. With prison looming, George and Martha made a choice. They got down on their knees. "Adrian, you've always been the strong one," George pleaded. "Your brother's not like you. He's soft. He wouldn't survive a week in prison." Celeste, Adrian's wife, chimed in again and again. "No matter what happens, Adrian, Nina and I will wait for you. We'll love you always. We'll be right here when you get out." He believed them. So he took the fall. 10 years behind bars. On the day he was released, one by one, inmates were picked up by family. Adrian stood alone from morning to dusk, watching cars come and go. No one came for him. While he rotted, Ethan had taken over, his title, his office, his life. Celeste, who once swore forever, married Ethan in Adrian's 2nd year inside. Their daughter, Nina, now called Ethan Dad. The day Adrian learned the truth, his hair turned white overnight. In the end, he collapsed in a muddy alley, dying alone. That's where he saw them, one last time. Nina stepped out of a luxury car, dressed head to toe in designer brands. She wrinkled her nose behind a manicured hand. "Why'd you bring me here? I don't want to see some filthy beggar." Beneath a black umbrella, George and Martha clung to Ethan, their expressions ice cold. "How did we raise something like this?" George muttered. "What a disgrace." Celeste stood furthest away. When Adrian, trembling, reached a hand toward her, she turned her face to the side. Then, darkness. Now, back in the year Ethan was about to ruin everything, Adrian had one plan. Get there first. Leave them all behind. The moment Adrian pushed open the front door, he heard Nina's voice echoing from the living room, shrill, tear-streaked, furious. "I don't want Daddy. I want Uncle Ethan. Uncle Ethan buys me toys and takes me out for ice cream. Daddy always makes me do stuff I hate him." Adrian froze, listening in silence. His jaw tightened. A sharp pain stabbed through his chest. Nina had a sensitive stomach. No matter how many people he had to manage at the company, thousands, at times, he always made time to check in on her meals, to make sure she ate properly. But Ethan? He spoiled her rotten. Said yes to everything. And somehow, that bought him a place in her heart that Adrian could never reach. Closer than a father and daughter. Years of careful love, and all it earned him was her open disgust. In this life, Adrian had made up his mind, he was done trying. He walked into the living room, didn't spare Nina a glance. Instead, he turned to the housekeeper and spoke in a calm, flat voice. "Open the freezer. Take out all the ice cream. From now on, if Nina wants something, give it to her. Anything she wants, let her do it. No one's allowed to stop her." Nina blinked, stunned. "Wait, are you serious?" "Dead serious." He finally looked at her. No warmth in his eyes, no softness. "You want to see Uncle Ethan? I'll take you to him in a bit. Stay at the old house as long as you like. Forever, if you want." It made no difference to him if she never came back. Nina let out a squeal of joy and ran off to pack her little backpack. Adrian's gaze drifted to the woman standing silently nearby, Celeste. Beautiful as ever, with that serene, gentle aura. The same face that once coaxed him into taking the fall for Ethan. Now that he saw her for who she really was, the charm had worn thin. Celeste noticed his stare and shifted uncomfortably, her brows drawing together. "You're different today. Did something happen?" Adrian gave a faint, lopsided smile. "Nothing big. Just realized I'm tired of living like this." Soon, he'd be gone, at least officially. Adrian would be dead. Alex would take his place. Whatever happened to the Hale family from then on was none of his business. Celeste and Nina? No longer his wife and daughter. Why waste another ounce of energy playing a role no one wanted him in? Just then, a slender hand touched his shoulder. Celeste's fingers gently squeezed, her voice soft and sweet, like a cool stream on a hot day. "Then maybe you should spend more time with me and Nina. Adrian, even if you stopped working, my investments are more than enough to keep you and Nina comfortable for life. You don't have to push yourself so hard." Adrian's body tensed. He remembered how she'd lied to his face in the past life, coaxing him into prison for someone else. He pulled away from her touch, stepped back, studied her face like a stranger might. Celeste shifted under his gaze, clearly unsettled. And then, Adrian smiled. That warm, familiar smile she'd seen 1,000 times. As if the coldness from seconds ago had never existed. "Come with me to the old house," he said smoothly. "There's something I need to announce." The old Hale family estate stood still in time, a relic of wealth and legacy. As soon as Nina stepped through the doors, she bolted straight into Ethan's arms, wrapping herself around him like a little vine. "Uncle Ethan, I missed you so much," she squealed. "Uncle Ethan, you have the best smile." The same girl who threw tantrums at home like a pint-sized tyrant was suddenly all sugar and sunshine. Around Ethan, her mouth turned to honey. Adrian stood quietly off to the side, his face unreadable. But his peripheral gaze caught Celeste, watching Ethan, too. Her eyes soft, full of something dangerously close to affection. As if she felt Adrian watching, Celeste quickly turned her head, about to say something. But Ethan beat her to it. He walked over, hand in hand with Nina. They were wearing matching outfits. Coordinated, down to the colors and stitching, like a father and daughter. "Check it out," Ethan said with a grin, twirling Nina's hand in his. "Got her this daddy-daughter set. Cute, right?" Then he made a goofy face, exaggerated for Nina's laughter, right in front of Celeste. Celeste blinked in surprise. Her smile was restrained, glancing sideways at Adrian. "Nina never wears pink," she said softly. "You're the only one who could get her to do it." A flash of pride lit up Ethan's face. Then he turned to Adrian. "Jealous, big bro?" he teased. "Nina's totally smitten with me." Adrian looked at him, really looked at him. That harmless, grinning face. But behind it, memories surged like a flood. All of it. The lies. The betrayal. The ruin. His nails dug sharply into his palm. The pain kept him anchored. Focused. Just then, George's voice pulled him back to the room. "Adrian," the old man called warmly. "We made all your favorite dishes tonight. Come eat." Adrian turned toward the table. Every plate was filled with clean, delicate flavors, exactly the kind he liked. It had only happened once before. Just once. George had personally cooked. A full spread, made with care. Adrian had thought maybe, just maybe, he was finally being seen. Then came the blow. "Adrian," George had said, with that same fatherly tone, "your mother and I talked. From now on, let Ethan handle the company. You focus on the family. Take it easy. Stay home." The weight of every eye at that table had crushed him. Like he was a thief. Like he had stolen something that rightfully belonged to Ethan. No one remembered the nights he collapsed from exhaustion. The emergency room visits. The ICU. All while Ethan was overseas, sipping cocktails on the beach. No one remembered it was Adrian who had saved Martha's life. When the liver cancer diagnosis came and the only hope was a transplant, he had just barely recovered from a major illness himself. Still, he climbed onto that operating table without hesitation, risked everything to give her a second chance. But none of that mattered now. At the dinner table, Nina pouted, her face flushed with frustration. "Why don't you just give Uncle Ethan what he wants? Don't be so stingy." Celeste chimed in, her voice soft and honeyed. "Adrian, even if you never worked another day, I could still support you and Nina. You don't have to do everything alone." Then Martha clapped her hands, cutting through the conversation. "I'm still the head of this household," she declared. "This is settled." George, eyes misty, leaned in with that familiar pleading tone. "Adrian, come on, he's your little brother. Let him have this." In his past life, this was the moment Adrian snapped. He'd stood from that table and declared war on all of them, told them over his dead body would Ethan ever take over Hale Corporation. But not this time. Now, Adrian's eyes scanned the table. His mother. His father. His wife. His daughter. His so-called brother. He smiled. Calm. Measured. Inevitable. "Actually," he said evenly, "I've got an announcement too." Everyone paused. Forks halfway to mouths. "Starting tomorrow, I'm handing over the company to Ethan. I've decided it's time I returned to the family and focused on my home life." A beat of stunned silence, then the atmosphere shifted, like a dam breaking. Laughter, chatter, relief. Martha and George smiled at him in a way they never had before. "Adrian," Martha beamed, "you have no idea how happy that makes us." "You've finally grown up," George said, eyes shining with pride. Nina, from across the table, shouted with glee. "Uncle Ethan rules." Adrian sat quietly amid the noise, staring at his plate, a mountain of carefully prepared food. He didn't take a single bite. His gaze lifted to Celeste. As expected, her eyes were fixed lovingly on Ethan. No one noticed when Adrian slipped away. After that night, he never went back to the company. Not once. 10 days later, he was jogging on a treadmill at the gym when his phone buzzed. A new Instagram notification. Ethan had posted. The photo was a smug selfie from inside the executive office, Adrian's former office. Ethan was dressed sharp, posed like a textbook corporate success story, mimicking Adrian's old posture. The caption read, "Leading Hale Corporation into a new era." In under a minute, the whole family had piled into the comments. "Martha, do your best. The future of Hale Corp is in your hands." "George, my boy's all grown up." "Nina, Uncle Ethan is the coolest." "Celeste, proud of you." Just 3 words. But they hit harder than a punch. Words Adrian had never once heard for himself. His throat tightened. His vision blurred. The treadmill kept spinning, but all the post-workout energy drained from his body in an instant. And in that moment, surrounded by the hum of machines and the illusion of movement, Adrian felt like he was standing completely still. Adrian stepped off the treadmill, sweat cooling against his skin. He was just reaching for his towel when his phone buzzed again. "Ethan. Big family dinner tonight at Summit Hall to celebrate me. You have to come. Got a surprise for you." Then, another message. A photo. Celeste. Her blouse was slipping off one shoulder, lips parted just enough to leave nothing to the imagination. No caption. None needed. 30 minutes later, Adrian stood in front of Summit Hall, staring at the last message for a long moment before pushing the private suite door open. Voices floated out immediately, familiar, sharp, cutting. "Celeste," a woman laughed, "when are you gonna divorce him already? Don't tell me you've actually caught feelings for the guy." A pause. Then Celeste's voice, bright, crystalline, painfully clear. "Feelings? Please. Adrian's nothing like you. If it hadn't been for that engagement contract, I'd never have married him. Ethan, you just took over the company, things aren't stable yet. I had to stay close to Adrian to keep him under control for you." Every word was a blade. Adrian stood frozen just outside the door. Blood rushed to his head so fast it felt like gravity flipped. He swayed, vision swimming. A passing waiter caught him by the arm. "Sir? Are you okay?" Adrian pulled himself upright, voice hoarse. "I'm fine." His eyes burned. He blinked hard, but the tears didn't stop the scene unfolding before him. Just then, the entrance buzzed with chatter. George and Martha had arrived, beaming, slipping bills to the staff in a display of loud, eager generosity. Adrian watched them for a long, quiet moment. They looked happy. Radiant. Proud. Until George spotted him. The smile faltered. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. You're here," George said, trying to sound casual, but failing. They hadn't told Adrian about the dinner, hoping to avoid complications. But here he was anyway. Adrian met his father's eyes, then Martha's. Their expressions told him everything. That he wasn't supposed to be part of this. That this was Ethan's night. "I'm here to celebrate my brother," Adrian said flatly. "Or have I lost even the right to show up at family gatherings now that I'm officially useless?" His voice was rough, the pain barely veiled. There was something fragile in the way he stood there, shoulders stiff, face pale, eyes rimmed with red. Anyone watching closely might have mistaken him for a man moments away from breaking. Martha frowned, clearly about to speak when a shrill, delighted voice cut through the tension. "Uncle Ethan. I made you something in art class today." Nina's voice rang like a bell, full of joy. "It's a red flower, because you're the best uncle in the world." She came running full speed, a blur of excitement, and leapt into Adrian's arms, thinking it was Ethan. For a second, everything stilled. She smiled up at him, bright and trusting. Just like she used to, back when she was a chubby toddler who followed him everywhere, her laughter filling their little apartment. But then she blinked. Realized. Her smile vanished. She recoiled like she'd touched something toxic. She pulled away, hiding the flower behind her back, her eyes clouding with disgust and suspicion. Her body language said it all. "I don't want to be near you." Adrian stood there, arms still half raised, the warmth of her tiny body fading quickly from his chest. He didn't move. He just stared. Just then, the door to the private room opened. Ethan and Celeste stepped out side by side. The moment they saw Adrian standing there, both froze. Celeste's eyes flickered, panic. Subtle, but there. She instantly put distance between herself and Ethan, walking over to Adrian with a soft, practiced smile. "When did you get here?" she asked gently. why didn't you come inside? Adrian looked straight at her, this woman he'd shared a bed with for 7 years. He used to think she was simply reserved, emotionally guarded. Now he understood. The coldness wasn't her nature. It was disinterest. Disinterest in him. This marriage had never been about love. It had been about shielding another man. His smile curled, faintly bitter. The look in his eyes, pure disappointment. "This is your family gathering," he said quietly. "I didn't want to intrude." Celeste blinked, caught off guard. Something tightened in her chest, though she couldn't name it. "Adrian, don't say that." But no amount of soft words could patch the hole in Adrian's chest. He turned to George and Martha, his voice even. "I'll let you all enjoy your evening. I have things to take care of." And just as he took a step back, a sudden, violent cough racked his body. He raised a hand to his mouth. And pulled it away stained with blood. George's and Martha's faces twitched with something unreadable. Celeste flinched, her fingers curling slightly. He'd barely straightened when, suddenly, Ethan clutched his chest. "Ow," he winced. "My heart, something's wrong." At once, the entire group's attention whipped around. Martha bolted for her phone, shouting to call an ambulance. George wrapped an arm around Ethan, panic all over his face. Celeste rushed out the door, saying she'd get medicine. Nina's voice trembled as she teared up, "Uncle Ethan, don't be hurt, please don't be hurt." No one looked back at Adrian. He closed his eyes. 1 second. 2. Then he opened them again, jaw clenched tight. Without a word, he turned and walked out of the restaurant, shoulders rigid, stomach burning with pain. He flagged down a taxi himself. No one stopped him. No one even noticed he was gone. The doctor's verdict was clear: the stress and emotional strain had caused a critical blockage. One more outburst, one more flare of rage, and his heart might not take it. He needed peace. Strictly. Adrian was sent home to recover. Days passed. Aside from the housekeeper, the Hale family didn't visit once. Celeste never came by. Neither did George. Or Martha. Or Nina. They were all too busy, at Ethan's bedside. Christmas Day. Adrian was home alone. The house was silent. The staff had all gone home early for the holidays to be with their families. He stood in the kitchen, staring into a pot of gently steaming soup, the only warmth left in the entire house. A few days ago, the central heating had mysteriously shut off. The radiators were dead. Adrian hadn't bothered calling a technician. He already knew. This had Ethan written all over it. Outside, temperatures had dropped below freezing. Inside, it wasn't much better. The cold clung to the walls, the floor, his bones. Bundled in a thick parka, Adrian stood at the stove, flipping a steak in the pan when his phone buzzed. A video call. From Ethan. He answered. "We're in Hawaii," Ethan said, tanned and grinning, face glowing with vacation sun. "How's life back home, all by yourself?" Behind him, Martha and George were sipping tea and chatting, their laughter muted by distance. Through the glass doors, Celeste was on the beach, holding Nina's hand, both of them running through the sand barefoot, trailing sunlight and joy. It looked like a postcard. Warmth. Family. Love. None of it included Adrian. They'd all gone without a word. Left him in a freezing house while they chased summer on the other side of the world. Adrian didn't flinch. Didn't blink. He looked straight into the camera. "I'm fine," he said calmly. "Sorry to disappoint, you didn't get your wish." Ethan smirked, eyes glittering with mock concern. "Heard you coughed up blood the other day. Sucks no one noticed, huh? Mom and Dad were so focused on me, they totally forgot." "That's rough." He laughed, then added, almost gleefully, "Oh, and just in case some shady doctor tries to scam you, I went ahead and froze your accounts. Wouldn't want you wasting the company's money. A beat. If it gets really bad, try drinking some hot water. That's what Mom always says, right?" He gave a fake pout. "Stay warm, bro." Then he giggled. Fully unmasked now. The polished mask of brotherly concern was gone, what remained was smug, petty cruelty. Just before the call ended, a blur crossed the screen. Celeste's voice came faintly from off-camera. "Ethan, who are you talking to?" "No one," Ethan replied quickly. "Just a friend." He hung up before she could see the screen. But Adrian had heard her. Loud and clear. "Don't drink so much. You know your stomach's sensitive." Simple words. Full of casual intimacy. The kind of reminder only a partner would say. The kind that came from habit, from care. From love. That's what they were now, real husband and wife. And George and Martha? They saw it. Heard it. And said nothing. They'd long accepted it. Maybe even approved. A quiet ache spread through Adrian's chest, deep and sharp. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were red. Not from rage. Not even grief. Just cold. And the slow, undeniable realization. He was completely, unmistakably alone. Just then, the doorbell rang. Adrian opened it to find Mr. Graham, the longtime butler of the Caldwell family, standing with two attendants behind him, arms full of carefully wrapped boxes. "Mr. Adrian," Mr. Graham said warmly, "these are from Mrs. Caldwell. She asked us to deliver them on her behalf. One for every Christmas you've missed, from your first to your 30th. He placed the gifts down with care. Each one labeled by year. Each one wrapped differently, thoughtfully. "Mrs. Caldwell wishes you peace, joy, and everything your heart desires," he said with a respectful nod. Adrian had weathered the Hale family's coldness with quiet endurance. But now, standing before this pile of love wrapped in ribbons, he couldn't hold it in any more. His throat tightened. The tears came fast, unexpected. In 30 years of life, his biological parents had treated him like a tool. And now, this woman, who shared no blood with him, was the first to show him what a mother's love could feel like. He wiped his tears and looked up, his voice steady, solemn. "Tell her. I'll be there in 10 days. Right on time." It would be the start of something new. The day he left the Hale name behind, forever. That night, Adrian curled up on the couch, surrounded by unopened gifts. He only got through half before sleep took him. Somewhere in the night, a faint noise stirred from upstairs. Adrian's sleep was light these days. His eyes snapped open. In the shadows, he saw movement, a figure, creeping through the darkness. A cold memory flashed in his mind. In his past life, someone had broken into the house just like this. A strange woman had slipped into his bedroom, and when Celeste walked in on it, she'd assumed the worst. That he'd cheated. The fallout had been instant, and irreversible. His reputation was shattered. The family turned on him completely. When Ethan later faced criminal charges, it was easy for them to toss Adrian under the bus. This time, he was ready. Without hesitation, Adrian slipped off the couch and into the downstairs bathroom. Calmly, silently, he called Mr. Graham. "Send people back. Same route. Fast." Moments later, just as the intruder spotted Adrian through the glass and raised something heavy to smash the window, Mr. Graham's team burst through the door and pinned her to the ground. Crisis averted. By the time Adrian finished his statement at the police station and returned home, it was nearly dawn. He stepped inside, weary, only to stop short. The lights were on. Ethan was sitting in the living room. So were George, Martha, Celeste. The gifts from Mrs. Caldwell were stacked neatly in the corner, untouched but clearly inspected. Ethan held one of them up, a rare, sleek luxury watch, still in its box. "Whoa," he said, eyes wide with faux innocence. "You get all these while we were gone?" He turned the watch over in his hands. "If I'm not mistaken, this is that limited edition piece collectors have been chasing for years. Only a handful in the world, right?" Then he glanced at Celeste. His expression said more than words ever could. Celeste's face was tight. Beautiful, but furious. She raised her eyes to Adrian, her voice cold. "I really thought I knew who you were." Adrian didn't flinch. Because this time, he knew exactly who they were. Adrian stared at her, barely suppressing a laugh. That stern look Celeste wore, the moral indignation in her voice, how ironic. She'd never really loved him. He knew that now. But the moment she thought he might be unfaithful, she'd flown into rage. Like betrayal only mattered when it came from him. If he hadn't overheard the truth that night, her saying she'd never had feelings for him, maybe he would have mistaken this jealousy for love. He turned away, voice calm, indifferent. "The gifts are from a friend. I'm just holding on to them for now." He didn't care whether they believed him or not. His arm throbbed, still aching from the scuffle earlier, and he moved toward the cabinet to grab the first aid kit. That's when Celeste grabbed his wrist. Her fingers were tight, the look in her eyes darker than he'd ever seen. Gone was the usual softness. What replaced it felt unfamiliar. Cold. Unsettling. Her throat moved as she swallowed hard, then pointed to a woman's shawl on the floor. Her voice came out hoarse. "What kind of a friend leaves this in a man's house?" Adrian winced, the pressure on his arm had pulled at the wound. He inhaled sharply in pain. Celeste immediately let go, startled. "I didn't even grab you that hard," she said, confusion flickering across her face. Then she saw the blood seeping through his sleeve. Her expression shifted. "You're hurt? How did you get hurt? At home?" She stepped forward, hands twitching, reaching out like she was going to check the wound herself. But before she could touch him, Adrian looked up. His eyes were like ice. Detached. Empty. Her hand froze mid-air. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, voice low. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked over to the downstairs bathroom. With a loud clang, he yanked the door open. The chaos inside was immediate: shattered glass, overturned toiletries, signs of a struggle. Celeste's face paled. Martha and George, standing behind them, gasped. Adrian didn't even look at them. He let the silence hang, heavy. Then he laughed, quiet and bitter. "A break-in. I almost got attacked," he said, his voice bone dry. "And the first thing you all did was try to catch me cheating." Martha and George exchanged a glance but said nothing. Celeste let out a slow exhale. Her tone softened, as if trying to pull everything back from the edge. "I'm sorry," she murmured, walking toward him. "I shouldn't have left you here alone." Too late. Adrian didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Some apologies are only meaningful when they come before the damage is done. Not after the heart has already stopped caring. Adrian felt nothing. He turned cold eyes to Ethan. "I'm curious," he said flatly, "in a place like this, with private security, gated access, cameras everywhere, what would make someone risk breaking into this house on Christmas night? Unless, of course, she already knew I'd be the only one here." Ethan's expression twitched, just a flicker, but Adrian caught it. Still, he tried to recover, his voice strained but casual. Maybe she'd been watching the house for a while. Could have been planning it. Or maybe, he gave a weak shrug, you knew her before. Who knows? Adrian let out a short, sharp laugh. Right. If she's that dangerous, we should open an official case. He turned toward the door. No. Ethan's voice cracked with panic. Everyone looked at him. That single, too loud protest unraveled him faster than anything else could. Martha and George exchanged a glance, and went pale. Ethan's eyes welled with sudden, desperate tears. As they spilled over, Martha rushed to his side, dabbing his face with a trembling hand. "Don't cry, sweetheart, it's okay," she said, then turned to Adrian, voice shifting into a brittle mix of pleading and command. "The woman's already been caught. What good would filing a report do? Do you want this to become a scandal?" "Adrian," George added, as if to sweet-talk a stubborn child. "Let it go. This isn't worth stirring up trouble." And there it was. The truth Adrian had refused to see. He'd spent so long believing his parents were blind to Ethan's manipulations. That if he just exposed enough, proved enough, they'd finally see him for who he really was. But no. They'd seen it all. And they'd chosen him anyway. Even now, when Adrian had nearly been ruined by a staged scandal, they still shielded the source of it all. Why? The question tore through his skull like a scream. Adrian stared at them, and something behind his eyes cracked open, something final. The last thread of loyalty to the Hale family began to snap, one invisible strand at a time. Then, light pressure on his shoulder. "Celeste." Her voice was soft, calculated. "Adrian, you're safe now. Let me deal with the police. You don't have to worry. I won't let anything like this happen to you again, okay?" She was afraid too, afraid the investigation would expose Ethan. Her concern wasn't for Adrian. It never had been. His chest burned. He stepped back, wanting nothing more than to shake her off, but before he could, a sharp slam to his lower back. He stumbled forward, crashing to the floor. His spine lit up with searing pain, like a blade buried in the base of his back. But even that agony paled next to what he heard next. "Bad daddy!" Nina shrieked, her voice shrill with rage and tears. "You made Uncle Ethan cry. You're a bad, bad daddy. Hit him. Hit the bad daddy." Celeste had her arms around her, trying to hold her back, but Nina kicked, screamed, flailed, her little legs thrashing violently toward Adrian's crumpled body on the ground. In that moment, time slowed. Everything else faded. The room, the cold, the pain. Adrian could only see her. His daughter. His blood. Screaming for him to be punished. The words echoed again and again. "Hit him. You're a bad daddy." Something gave way inside him. Tears slid silently from the corner of his eye. A pressure began to swell in his chest, tight, suffocating. His heart fought for air, beat after desperate beat. The world narrowed, the edges darkened. Then, nothing. Adrian's body hit the floor, limp. And the room, for the first time that night, fell silent. When Adrian finally woke, he was in a hospital bed. His breath fogged the inside of the oxygen mask, warm condensation blurring his vision. His limbs felt like they'd been filled with lead, every movement slow, weighted, barely possible. Even lifting a single finger felt like dragging it through wet concrete. A nurse nearby saw his eyes open and rushed to his side. "You're awake." "Finally," she said, half laughing with relief. "You've been out for 3 days. Mrs. Caldwell's been in and out of here constantly. If you'd stayed unconscious any longer, I think the whole hospital staff would have jumped off the roof in guilt." Adrian managed a faint smile. His lips were dry and colorless. His voice came out thin, barely audible. "Has anyone else come by? Other than Mrs. Caldwell?" The nurse's smile faltered. She shook her head. No, just her. I've been on your rotation since you were admitted. Haven't seen anyone else visit. She paused, then added, your housekeeper was the one who called the ambulance. Good thing she did. If the blood hadn't been cleared out in time, you might have ended up a vegetable. Adrian frowned. He remembered collapsing at home. The entire family had been there. They'd watched it happen. Every single one of them. And yet, not one had followed him to the hospital. A chill ran through his chest. He thought back to the doctor's warning, no stress. No anger. Or your heart won't hold out. He closed his eyes. Took 3 deep breaths. Then 3 more. He would not fall apart again. That evening, he remained in bed, the sterile quiet of the room pressing in on him. When Caldwell Mrs. found out he'd regained consciousness, she called immediately. Her voice over the phone was warm, but when the conversation turned to Celeste, it sharpened, her tone laced with fury. Adrian didn't understand why at first. Then his phone buzzed. A new video message. From Ethan. He was in a hospital bed too. Hair damp and tousled, skin pale, lips tinged slightly blue. He looked fragile, like he'd stepped out of a tragic romance movie. Martha and George sat beside him, eyes swollen from crying. And then, a woman's hand appeared in the frame. Elegant. Familiar. Feeding Ethan soup, slowly and carefully. On her left hand was a wedding ring, identical to the one Adrian still wore. Celeste. Who else could it be? Adrian didn't even flinch when another hand appeared, a tiny one this time, holding out a peeled mandarin, perfectly cleaned of every bit of white string. A little girl's voice piped up sweetly. Uncle Ethan, please get better soon. I don't like it when you're sick. Nina. So that's why no one had come. They were all here. Together. In another wing, in another room, building their own version of family while he lay alone, unconscious. And not a single one of them had thought he was worth a visit. Adrian closed his eyes and shut off the video. Family had become a luxury he could no longer afford to hope for. All he wanted now was quiet. Just a little peace. But even that was too much to ask. Not long after Ethan's video, the door to Adrian's hospital room opened. He didn't need to look to know who it was. The whole family had arrived. Ethan was in a wheelchair, being pushed by George. Martha walked beside them, and Celeste stood quietly at the back, her face pale, her expression unreadable. Adrian, Celeste spoke first, her voice low and hoarse. She looked thinner than he remembered. Dark circles had settled under her eyes. It had only been 3 days, but the exhaustion clinging to her face made it feel like years had passed. The full family appearance sent a clear signal. Something was coming. And it wasn't good. Before Adrian could speak, Ethan wheeled himself up to the bed, then dropped to his knees, sobbing. I'm dying, he choked out. They said it's terminal. I don't have much time left. George broke down instantly, burying his face in his hands with a dramatic wail. Martha put a hand on his shoulder, sighing, eyes already red with tears. Then she turned to Adrian, her voice soft, almost rehearsed. We're here because Ethan had one final wish. He wants to take some photos. Just a few keepsake portraits before he passes. With Celeste. She smiled, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Adrian stared at her. Surely, he'd misheard. But no. That's what she'd said. Photos. With his wife. As a dying man's souvenir. He looked around the room. They all seemed so sure he'd say yes. His laugh was dry, sharp, bitter. What if I say no? He asked, voice low. George stormed forward, furious. His face flushed, his voice thunderous. Adrian. How could you be so heartless? Your brother's dying. The anger in his eyes burned with disbelief and disgust, as if Adrian had just committed an unforgivable sin by hesitating. Adrian looked into that fury and saw something clearer than ever. Even now, even here, they only ever came to him with their hands out. He met George's eyes and spoke calmly. You want to coddle him, indulge him, fine. That's your choice. But as long as Celeste and I are still married, I won't allow this ridiculous request. Then he turned, gaze locking on Celeste. Unless, he said coldly, you want to end the marriage. Celeste froze. For a second, he thought he imagined it, but her pupils did twitch, a flicker of something unreadable flashing in her eyes. Anger. Maybe regret. Maybe just surprise that he was the one to say it first. After a long pause, she parted her lips. Fine, she said quietly. Her voice was cool, controlled. Then we'll divorce. Adrian, Celeste said that day in the hospital, voice calm and chilling, not only am I taking wedding photos with Ethan. I'm giving him the grandest wedding imaginable. Then, without another glance back, she turned and wheeled Ethan out of the room. The hospital fell silent. Just the sound of machines humming. Adrian lay there, motionless. Alone. He stared at the ceiling for a long time. So long, the tears dried on his skin. Then, something inside him settled. Resolved. In the dead of night, a taxi pulled up outside a luxury villa. Adrian stepped out, still in a hospital gown. The cold hit his skin like needles, but he didn't flinch. He looked up at the house, their house. The one he and Celeste had once called home. In his hand was a cheap plastic lighter. He stepped forward. Inside, the room still bore the ghosts of a family that had once pretended to be whole. Nina's favorite doll lay face down on the carpet, just where she'd left it. Crayon doodles stained the hallway walls, still not scrubbed clean. Celeste's shawl was draped carelessly over the back of the sofa. Traces of their lives, scattered like relics. Adrian swallowed hard and turned away. He climbed the stairs. In the master bedroom's walk-in closet, past rows of designer suits, he found it, an old, ill-fitting white blazer. Cheap fabric. Off the rack. Slightly wrinkled. He pulled it down with both hands. He'd bought it years ago, on their honeymoon in Las Vegas. That night, the city streets were pulsing with light. A mass wedding was happening on the strip, music blaring, strangers cheering. On impulse, Adrian had ducked into a street vendor's stall, grabbed the white blazer, and dragged Celeste into the crowd. They were drunk, laughing, reckless. They danced under neon skies, and when the music finally died down, Celeste's arms stayed wrapped around him long after the song had ended. Her eyes had been glassy, glowing. I think I really fell for you tonight, she'd whispered. Back then, Adrian didn't know what she meant. Now, he finally did. That same night, she got pregnant with Nina. They say kids born of love are always the most beautiful. And Nina had been beautiful, big, round eyes like black grapes, snow-white skin, a smile that lit up a room. But like her mother, her heart had never once belonged to him. Adrian stepped outside into the garden. In one hand, the white blazer. In the other, their wedding photo. Two things he once treasured more than anything. He flicked the lighter. Held the flame steady. The fire caught quickly, curling up the edges of the photo, devouring fabric and memory in seconds. By the time the fire died, nothing was left but ash. A gust of wind came through the garden, scattering it all into the night. Their story was over. His connection to Celeste, and to her daughter, was finished. Adrian was just about to leave when he heard voices at the door. Laughter. Then came a sickly sweet voice, drifting in like smoke. Nina, your mommy and daddy are getting divorced. How about Uncle Ethan becomes your new daddy, The words hit Adrian like a blade to the chest. He froze, breath caught in his throat. And then Nina's voice rang out, loud and delighted. Yes. I don't like Daddy, I like Uncle Ethan. I want Uncle Ethan to be my daddy. Ethan chuckled, his tone dripping with smug satisfaction. Good girl, he cooed. Now go take your bath, and I'll give you a chocolate after, okay? His voice had the same cadence someone might use to train a pet. And Nina? She didn't seem to notice. Her tiny figure, barely tall enough to reach the doorknob, padded off into the bathroom alone, happily humming as she ran the water. Adrian stood hidden in the guest room, frozen. His chest tightened, a deep, slow clench. The kind that didn't explode, it just stayed, silent and crushing. A moment later, the front door opened again. Celeste walked in, shaking off the cold. Ethan was there in an instant, sliding his arms around her waist like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Celeste, he whispered, his voice thick with want, I've waited so long for this day. His hands were already on the buttons of her blouse, tugging gently. I've got a surprise for you tonight. Her cheeks flushed slightly, but she stopped him with a hand against his chest, whispering, Nina's still awake. We shouldn't let her see. Ethan smiled, undeterred. She's being such a good girl, ran off to bathe all on her own. He leaned in, breath hot. Why don't we pick this up, in the bedroom? They kissed. Then vanished into the master suite, the door clicking shut behind them. Adrian waited a few more moments before stepping out of the guest room. His hospital gown clung to his thin frame, and his face, already pale, looked nearly ghost-like now. His eyes lifted toward the second floor, expression hollow. Then he turned to go. But a scream pierced the quiet. Nina? Adrian bolted to the bathroom. Steam billowed from the open door, fogging the mirrors, the air thick with humidity. Through the haze, he saw Nina crumpled on the floor, soaked, shivering. He rushed to her, kneeling down, gently lifting her up. But the moment she saw his face, she recoiled like he was poison. Who said you could come back? She snapped. I have a new daddy now. I don't need you. Her voice was sharp. Her eyes, cold. And just like that, the final wound landed. Adrian stared at her, then slowly let go. You're right, he said quietly. If you already have a new dad, then you don't need my protection. He stood up. Calm. Unshaken. But before leaving, he paused at the door. His voice was low, almost gentle. Don't eat chocolate before bed. It'll rot your teeth. It was the last thing he ever said to her. Nina sat there on the tile floor, dripping wet, staring after him. Something twisted in her chest, a strange feeling she couldn't name. But when she thought of handsome, kind Uncle Ethan, the worry faded. She shook her head and let it go. The wedding wasn't large. After all, by most social standards, it was a scandal. But that didn't stop Ethan from strutting in his tuxedo, all charm and smug confidence. He posed for photos with practiced ease, then sent every single one to Adrian. My wedding's about to begin. Shame you're not here to see it. Looking sharp, right? Celeste says I wear a suit better than you ever did. Adrian read the messages as he stood on a private tarmac, preparing to board. He carried only a small leather briefcase, minimal, unassuming. But inside were documents that held the fate of the entire Hale family empire in their pages. His phone kept pinging with Ethan's messages. Adrian glanced at the screen, smirked, then pulled out the SIM card. Snap. He tossed the broken card into a nearby bin. Then turned to the Caldwell family's elite security detail and spoke clearly. Release the news of my death in half an hour. And make sure Ethan receives my gift. The head of the team gave a sharp nod. Understood. The helicopter waited at the edge of the runway. Its doors open, red carpet rolled out across the steel steps. Adrian stepped aboard. Just before climbing inside, he looked back one last time, at Blueport, the city he had once bled for. The sky was blue. Bluer than it had been in days. Just like it had looked the day he was found and brought back home. But this time, he wasn't being found. This time, he was disappearing, for good. 2 hours later, the helicopter touched down. Adrian was gone. And in his place, Alex Caldwell stepped into the world. The long-lost son of the powerful Caldwell family. The heir. The real identity. From this day forward, Adrian Hale no longer existed. Back in Blueport, the wedding was in full swing. Ethan walked proudly down the aisle, Martha on his arm, a vision of maternal pride. Behind them, little Nina tossed flower petals into the air, a perfect picture of innocence in her dress and tiara. Celeste stood at the altar, watching Ethan approach. 10 years of love. A man she'd chosen. So why did her heart feel so still? Why was her mind full of images of Adrian? The way he looked in that rumpled white suit, smiling at her like she was his entire world. She blinked. Forced herself to focus. And then, the wedding screen flickered. The music faltered. The crowd turned. Adrian's face appeared on the massive screen. Calm. Composed. Final. "Hello, everyone," he said, "I'm Ethan's older brother, Adrian. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today, because..." A pause. "I'm already dead." Gasps broke out across the room. Celeste froze. Her hand lifted instinctively to her chest. And then, clink. Her wedding ring slipped from her finger. And fell to the floor. On the screen, Adrian held up a medical report. The words were hard to miss. Late-stage leukemia. Estimated survival, 1 month. He looked gaunt. His skin pale, lips nearly colorless. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, but every word hit like a knife. "Mom. Dad." He gave a small, weary smile. "I was being petty. Ethan was terminal, and I couldn't even agree to let Celeste take some wedding photos with him." He exhaled slowly, then continued. "But it's fine now. I've given him everything. My wife." He held up the ring. "Fully and officially. You don't have to be disappointed in me anymore." He looked directly into the camera, his voice steady, almost eerily calm. "Congratulations to my ex-wife and my brother on their beautiful wedding. I hope you stay in love, forever." Then, mid-sentence, blood trickled from both nostrils. Adrian blinked, stunned, then quickly covered his nose and reached for the camera. The screen cut to black. Silence fell over the wedding hall like a storm cloud. For a long moment, no one moved. Celeste stood frozen, eyes wide, face drained of color. Her heart clenched beneath her ribs, a suffocating tightness rising in her throat. The ring slipped from her hand and clattered to the ground. Martha and George looked just as stunned. They sat there, mouths slightly agape, as if the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Then a small voice broke the silence. "Mommy," Nina tugged at Celeste's dress. "What's cremation?" The question hit like a hammer. The guests snapped out of their shock, and the weight of what they'd just witnessed crashed down like a tidal wave. From the back of the room, a gray-haired elder, a longtime business ally of the Hale family, rose to his feet, his voice trembling with restrained fury. "Your brother isn't even cold in the ground, and you're marrying his wife," he said, eyes locked on Ethan and Celeste. "This is beyond disgraceful." Others followed. Chairs scraped against the floor. Guests rose. Murmuring. Whispering. Walking out in waves. In minutes, the grand ballroom, once filled with over 100 people, was nearly empty. The floral arrangements wilted under the weight of shame. The music had long stopped. Only silence remained. Ethan stood frozen, his jaw clenched. He felt as though something filthy had crawled into his throat and refused to leave. He wanted to scream. To curse Adrian. Why? Why couldn't he just die quietly? Why did he have to ruin everything even now? George finally spoke, his voice trembling. Why didn't he tell us he was sick? The question hung unanswered in the air. Ethan turned to George, swallowing his fury. He forced himself to look wounded, eyes glossy with carefully summoned tears. Dad. Adrian agreed to the divorce. This whole thing at the wedding, he just wanted to make me look bad. I can handle that, but what will people say about the Hale family now? He tried to sound hurt, selfless. But before George could reply, a sharp laugh cut through the room. Low. Bitter. From somewhere in the half-empty crowd. Everyone turned. They hadn't noticed, one guest hadn't left. A tall woman stood calmly at the back of the hall, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit, sharp cut and perfectly tailored. She exuded power, polished, unshakable, cold. As she walked toward the stage, each step echoed against the marble floor. Her presence alone was enough to pull the room back into silence. Her eyes, almond-shaped, razor-sharp, landed on Ethan. He felt it instantly. A chill, crawling up his spine. Celeste narrowed her eyes, her voice cool but dismissive. Who are you? I don't remember seeing your name on the guest list. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't answer. Just stared, head slightly tilted, like a lion watching prey too weak to bother chasing. Her voice came out clear. Cutting. You're not qualified to know my name. You. Celeste stepped forward, reaching for the woman's arm. She didn't make it far. Before her fingers even brushed fabric, two bodyguards in black moved in, swift, silent, brutal. They had her pinned to the ground in seconds. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan stumbled back a step, blood draining from his face. Who are you? He asked, voice cracking. The woman didn't answer right away. She just smiled, cold and mocking. Then slowly, deliberately, she raised her left hand. On her index finger gleamed a silver ring, sleek and heavy with age. The Hale family stared. Recognition hit like lightning. That ring belonged to the Prescott family, one of the most powerful financial dynasties in the world. Martha's mouth fell open. George's hands shook. Their expressions twisted from confusion to fear in the span of a breath. The woman saw it all. And smiled like she'd been waiting. She gave a slight nod. Her guards immediately released Celeste. Then, with one hand, the woman pulled a stack of documents from her coat and tossed them at Celeste's feet, pages scattering across the marble like ash. Take a good look, she said coolly. Every one of you. See what Adrian endured over the years. Her voice didn't rise, but it sliced through the silence like a blade. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every time you looked the other way. She turned in a slow circle, making sure her gaze met every face left in the hall. Anyone who hurt him, she said. Anyone who dared to use him, will pay. Then she turned on her heel. Without another word, she strode out of the hall, her security detail flanking her like shadows. The doors slammed shut behind her. And just like that, the Hale family was left standing in the ruins of their perfect wedding, surrounded by silence, shame, and the long-overdue echo of consequences. George bent down and picked up the scattered documents. A few words caught his eye: organ transplant, surgical donor, and then liver resection. Before he could process it, Ethan suddenly snatched the papers from his hands, panic flashing across his face. His fingers trembled as he clutched the file. His mouth opened in a forced smile. Just boring medical stuff, he muttered. Probably nothing. But the shake in his voice betrayed him. George narrowed his eyes, something gnawing at the back of his mind. He thought of Adrian, gone now, supposedly reduced to ashes. Alone. No one by his side at the end. That pain punched straight into his chest. "We need to go to the crematorium," he said suddenly, voice urgent. "We can't let Adrian leave this world like that. Not alone." The entire family piled into cars, speeding toward the crematory on the outskirts of the city. By the time they arrived, it was already too late. Thick, dark smoke poured from the tall chimney stack into the gray sky above. The smell of scorched air lingered. Martha and George stopped in their tracks. "No. Adrian," George whispered, voice cracking. "He can't be." Celeste surged forward and grabbed the arm of a staff member at the entrance, eyes blazing with desperation. "Where is Adrian's body? Did you already cremate him?" The man flinched, startled, and quickly pulled up the day's intake records on his tablet, his fingers trembling. Yes, we processed a mail earlier this morning, name, Adrian Hale. All documents matched. ID confirmed. He had a surgical scar on his left side, liver resection. That was in the file. Is that who you're here for?" Martha stepped forward, catching a glimpse of the ID photo on the screen. Her eyes went red instantly. "It's Adrian," she whispered, choking back a sob. George moved beside her. They scrolled down the record, and saw it. A surgery, 5 years ago. Liver resection. At that time, Martha had been desperately waiting for a transplant. Adrian had gone through the surgery. Then rushed overseas for a business negotiation. There was political unrest. He nearly didn't make it back for 3 months. And he never said a word. He didn't want them to worry. But Ethan had told them something very different. That Adrian had refused the surgery. That he'd run away. That he was too cowardly to save his own mother. Martha and George slowly turned to Ethan. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Horror. Grief. "Ethan," Martha said, her voice shaking. "Didn't you tell us, you were the one who saved me? That Adrian disappeared because he didn't want to donate?" George's voice followed, hoarse and sharp. "You lied to us?" Ethan opened his mouth but no sound came out. He swallowed, face stiff, and forced the words through gritted teeth. "I didn't lie. Adrian did leave the country. That part is true. But the documents didn't lie. The scar. The operation. The donor's name. It was all there. The one who saved Martha's life was Adrian." The silence broke like glass. George's anger surged, burning, raw. "You liar," he shouted. His voice cracked with more than rage, it was grief. Guilt. Years of it. He had loved Ethan deeply. Protected him. Nurtured him through every childhood illness. Even after Adrian was found, George had tried to treat them fairly, but the truth was, Ethan had always been the one he favored. And what had Ethan done? Not only had he stolen Adrian's credit. He had poisoned them against their own son. Let them believe Adrian was cold. Unfeeling. A coward. It had driven them apart. And now, Adrian was gone. The thought of his own son, his real son, dying alone in pain, with no one at his side, crushed something inside George. It felt like someone had carved a hole straight into his chest. Ethan began to panic. He dropped to his knees, tears streaming as he pleaded. "I didn't mean to lie. You raised me all these years, don't I count for something? If I could have saved Mom, I would have. But Adrian, he died from his illness. That had nothing to do with me. We can still be a family, just the three of us, like it used to be. I'm still your son, your good son, right? That pathetic plea, so shameless, so hollow, ignited something in George. His eyes flared with fury. And then came the crack. George raised his hand and slapped Ethan so hard across the face that the sound echoed down the cold crematory walls. "Get out," he roared. "Get out of the Hale family. From this moment forward, you're no son of mine." Ethan reeled from the blow, a red handprint blooming across his cheek. His face twisted with disbelief. "You hit me?" he gasped, eyes wide. "You're hitting me over something that happened years ago?" George stepped forward, ready to strike again. "After everything Adrian went through because of you, how could I not hit you?" Before he could raise his hand again, Celeste stepped in. She hesitated, but her hand reached out to stop George. She glanced at Ethan, his face blotched red, lips trembling, completely undone. But all she saw now was something broken. The tears, the charm, the warmth, all fake. His kindness? Fake. Maybe even his love for her, just another manipulation. She said nothing. She simply lowered her eyes, stepped aside, and let the silence settle. George turned on her, furious and heartbroken. "Celeste," he said, voice sharp, "you're still defending the man who killed Adrian?" She flinched at that. Ethan shifted, looking at her for help. But Celeste didn't move. She didn't speak. The silence was answer enough. George turned back to Ethan, rage still simmering in his eyes. "All these years," he spat, "I was blind. I let the wolf into my house, and it cost me my son. I won't forgive you. Ever." Then his voice dropped into something colder, final. "Hand over the properties. The shares. Everything in your name. Return it all." Ethan wiped the tears from his face, slowly rising to his feet. His expression changed. The pleading vanished. And in its place, a sneer. "You're dreaming," he said, his voice low and contemptuous. "That's not going to happen. No one could have imagined Ethan's shamelessness would run this deep. After George struck him and disowned him publicly, most assumed that would be the end. It wasn't. The next few weeks turned into a nightmare. Though George was the founder, most of the company's shares were in Ethan's hands. And when George tried to fight back through the courts, lawsuit after lawsuit, he lost. Every time. The public spectacle was humiliating. Martha, already shaken, collapsed from a heart attack the day the final verdict came in. She was rushed into intensive care and barely pulled through after hours of emergency treatment. When she woke up, weak and pale, her lips barely moved, but one name slipped out. Adrian. George sat at her bedside, eyes red, voice hoarse. "It's my fault," he whispered. "All my fault." Then the next blow came. Ethan froze all of their remaining accounts. He used Martha's life, her recovery, her treatments, as leverage. "If you want Mom to survive," he told George with chilling calm, "you'll transfer your assets to me. All of them. The properties, the cars, the jewelry. I'll take them off your hands for a nice discount." George's hands trembled. "You're blackmailing me with your own mother's life?" Ethan smiled without a trace of guilt. "Blueport's banking circle won't touch you. No one will lend you a dime. And even if you auction everything, it'll take 6 months minimum. You think she has that long?" George felt the blood drain from his body. His chest tightened, his breath catching in his throat. You're a monster." But Ethan just shrugged. "No. I was useful. That's why you kept me around. When Adrian was alive, I had to act sweet, say the right things. Smile. Grovel. All to stay in your good graces. But now that he's dead, He leaned in, voice low and sharp. Why the hell would I pretend anymore? He dropped a stack of transfer contracts at George's feet. My time's valuable. Sign them, or don't. Either way, I've got places to be. Then he turned and walked out, never looking back. George stared after him, stunned, unable to move. Security arrived a few minutes later. They didn't speak. Just picked him up, literally carried him, out of the company he'd built from the ground up. George stumbled outside, into the street. His limbs felt numb. His vision blurred. He wandered toward traffic in a daze. A horn blared. A car skidded. And just before it struck, a hand yanked him back to the curb. He gasped, looked up. A young man stood in front of him, neatly dressed, with a camera slung around his shoulder. He pulled out a press badge. Mr. Hale? George blinked. I'm a reporter with a show that helps reconnect families, the young man said. I heard you adopted the current CEO of Hale Corporation, Ethan Hale, about 15 years ago. Do you have time to talk? For the first time in days, George's eyes lit up. Like a drowning man seeing a rope tossed his way. Yes, he said quickly. Yes, of course. Ask me anything. I'll tell you everything. Late at night, Ethan returned home, slamming the front door behind him. He tossed his suit jacket onto the floor, not bothering to pick it up. Celeste still wasn't home. She hadn't really been home since the wedding. There was always an excuse: social events, business trips, late-night meetings. But Ethan wasn't an idiot. He remembered how they used to sneak around behind Adrian's back. He knew what distance looked like. Still, he said nothing. He couldn't say anything. He knew he had no right. As the bitterness festered in his chest, Nina came bounding in. Daddy, will you read me a bedtime story? Ethan froze. Her face. Her eyes. Her bone structure. She looked just like Adrian. His expression darkened. Story, he muttered. He grabbed the book from her hands, and ripped it to pieces. The shredded pages flew like confetti. He tossed them at her feet. You're not my daughter, he snapped. Why should I read to you? She stood frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. And stop crying. God, I hate crying kids. You hear me? Shut up. Nina's lips trembled. The man in front of her didn't look like the Ethan she once adored. That Ethan had been warm, gentle, full of smiles. This man was a stranger. A monster. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her tiny shoulders shook. Ethan grabbed her by the arm, hard, and twisted. I said don't cry. I want Daddy. Nina screamed. I don't want Uncle Ethan, I want my daddy. Her sobs became wails, loud and panicked. Ethan's head pounded. He snapped. He yanked her by the collar and threw her into the bathroom. Slammed the door shut behind her. You like crying? Then cry in there. Click. He locked the door. Nina was plunged into pitch black. In the silence, she imagined monsters in every corner, creatures waiting to pounce. She screamed. Screamed until her throat gave out. But no one came. Eventually, her tiny body gave up. She slumped to the floor, curled into a ball in the corner, whispering through ragged breaths. I want Daddy. I don't want Uncle Ethan anymore. Across town, Celeste sat alone in a luxury lounge, staring at her phone. 4 a.m. An hour until dawn. Her screen was filled with missed calls. Texts from Ethan, demanding she come home. She locked the screen with a flick of her thumb. Her brows furrowed. She felt a tightness in her chest, like something stuck there that wouldn't go away. Since Adrian died, everything had fallen apart. Ethan had moved into her home. At first, she thought things would finally be simple. They weren't. They argued constantly. He obsessed over luxury, status, control. He cared more about watches and influence than anything real. When she spoke about global markets, about music or politics, the kind of conversations she once shared effortlessly with Adrian, Ethan couldn't keep up. Didn't even try. He just grew resentful. Possessive. Paranoid she still held a candle for the man they both betrayed. And maybe she did. She couldn't sleep in that house anymore. Couldn't stand his touch. So she stayed out. Sometimes all night. The life she'd chosen in the name of love now tasted like ash. She swallowed her regret. Said nothing to anyone. But in her mind, Adrian's voice lingered. His quiet smile. His gentle hands on hers. The way he never raised his voice. She squeezed her eyes shut. But he wasn't coming back. Not now. Not ever. Celeste staggered out of the private lounge, heels clicking unevenly down the marble hallway. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure, a silhouette so painfully etched into her memory, she thought it had to be a hallucination. But she turned the corner anyway. When she saw the man's sharply defined profile under the warm sconce light, her blood froze and boiled at the same time. Adrian. The man said nothing. He walked calmly into a private suite guarded by two stern-faced men in black suits. Celeste rushed forward. One of the bodyguards stepped in front of her, holding up a hand. "Ma'am, this is Mr. Caldwell's private suite. No one enters without permission." Celeste's eyes darted to the silver badge pinned on the man's chest. Her breath caught. Caldwell family. A few days ago, there had been headlines everywhere, the Caldwell heir had finally been found. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Could it be? No. There's no way. How could two people look so exactly alike? She scrambled to explain. "My name is Celeste. Please, could you tell Mr. Caldwell I just want to say hello? That's all." The guard gave her a look, then disappeared into the room. He returned moments later, his expression even colder than before. "Mr. Caldwell says he doesn't know you. And he said, and I quote, 'Tell her to get lost.'" The words hit like a slap. Celeste's brows knit together, disbelief washing over her. She took a step forward. Her phone rang. She glanced down. The name on the screen made her heart stop. "Housekeeper." She answered immediately. "Miss Celeste, it's Nina. She's run away from home." A cold blast tore through her chest. "What?" "I went to grab some water after calling the doctor, and when I got back, she was gone. Just gone." Celeste didn't wait for more. She turned and sprinted out of the building. Nina was only 5 years old. She was mischievous sometimes, sure, but not reckless. She wouldn't even go to the bathroom alone at night. There was no way she'd run off without reason. When Celeste burst through the front door, she barked, "Did someone bully her?" The housekeeper flinched, her mouth twitching like she was trying to hold something back. Celeste stepped closer, her voice low and firm. "Tell me everything. I promise, no one will lay a hand on you." The woman swallowed hard. "It was Mr. Voss, he locked Miss Nina in the bathroom last night." Celeste blinked, stunned. "All night?" "I found her this morning, passed out on the floor. I rushed to get a doctor, but by the time I came back, she was gone." A red haze filled Celeste's vision. "Where's Ethan?" "He left early this morning. Said he had a big meeting he couldn't miss." Celeste didn't respond. She didn't scream. She didn't even breathe. Then, like a thunderclap. "Ethan." Her voice cracked through the silence of the house like glass shattering. Within seconds, she was out the door again, bolting toward Hale Corporation. On the way, she fired off calls. One to a friend with connections at the precinct. Another to a private security firm. Several to family friends, asking if anyone had seen Nina. She even texted Martha and George. "Is Nina at the house? Please respond, it's urgent." The answer came back fast. "No, she's not here." Her grip tightened on the wheel. If Nina wasn't with the Vosses, where the hell had she gone? And how dare Ethan go to a meeting, like none of this mattered, like his own mistakes hadn't pushed a 5-year-old to disappear into the city alone. Celeste's anger surged into something fierce, sharp, and relentless. This time, there would be no forgiveness. When Celeste burst into Ethan's office, what she saw nearly made her explode. He was locked in a heated kiss with a young female employee, her hands tangled in his hair, his fingers creeping under her blouse. The fury in Celeste's chest detonated. "Ethan, do you even have a shred of conscience left?" Her voice cracked like a whip across the room. Ethan jumped, scrambling to straighten his tie and smooth down his shirt. "Celeste? What are you, why are you here?" Celeste didn't answer. She took a deep breath, then turned her glare on the woman beside him. Her voice was sharp, cutting. "Get out." The girl bolted, heels clacking against marble as she disappeared down the hall. Now it was just the two of them, and the suffocating silence. Celeste stepped forward, each stride slow and deliberate, like a lion approaching its prey. Her eyes were ice daggers. Ethan's spine stiffened. A chill swept down his back. "Listen, babe, it's not what it looked like." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh? So what was it? A business meeting? A team-building exercise?" Before he could answer, she grabbed him by the collar, slamming him back against the wall with startling force. "I was blind," she said through gritted teeth. "Stupid. I gave up Adrian for you. You wanna mess around, chase skirts, fine. Go ahead and rot with whoever's desperate enough to keep you company. But you," her voice cracked with rage. "You traumatized Nina. You locked a 5-year-old in a dark bathroom and forgot about her. She ran away, Ethan." Ethan's eyes widened. He shook his head frantically, panic creeping in. "No, I didn't mean to. I swear, I meant to leave her there for a few minutes and then I forgot. That's all." "You forgot?" Celeste's voice dropped to a low growl. Her grip tightened around his collar. "She's 5. What the hell could she have done to deserve that?" Ethan clawed at her hands, his face flushing red from the pressure. "She wouldn't stop crying," he croaked. "She just kept screaming and whining." "Bastard." The word cracked from her throat. Her hand flew up and struck him hard across the face. The slap echoed. A vivid red handprint bloomed across his cheek. Ethan stood there, stunned, his hand slowly rising to touch the mark. "You hit me," he breathed. "You actually hit me?" He stared at her like she was some unrecognizable monster. Then his expression twisted into something dark. "Don't forget, I control Hale Corporation now. You really want to start a war with me, Celeste? You think I won't drag everyone down with me?" From the moment she saw him groping that woman, Celeste had known Ethan was beyond salvation. But even then, she hadn't expected this level of shamelessness. Ethan squared his shoulders, voice rising. "I'm not that pathetic kid you used to manipulate. You hit me? There will be consequences." Celeste looked at him then, really looked. And for the first time, her rage wasn't explosive. It was ice cold. Absolute. Unshakable. She took a step back, brushed her hair from her face, and met his threat with one of her own. "Then bring it," she said, voice low and steady. "See what happens." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked out, leaving Ethan standing alone in the wreckage of what little control he still believed he had. Celeste shoved Ethan's arm away and stormed out of the office without looking back, her footsteps fast and furious. Ethan stood frozen, rubbing the burning welt on his cheek, jaw clenched so tight it ached. Her words kept replaying in his mind. "I was such a fool, giving up Adrian for you." She regretted it? She regretted marrying him, for the sake of a dead man? Rage surged through Ethan's veins like fire. He clenched his fists until his nails cut into the flesh of his palms. "Celeste," he muttered through gritted teeth, "you're going to regret this." Just then, his assistant entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Sir, your interview taping is in 20 minutes. The production car is waiting downstairs." Ethan forced himself to steady his breathing. Public image first. He straightened his collar, smoothed his suit, and followed the assistant out. The black van took him to the studio, where cameras and stagehands bustled in controlled chaos. The host, a graceful woman with a honeyed voice and practiced smile, welcomed him warmly. The interview began with the usual fluff: business achievements, market insights, public image management. Then her tone shifted. "Mr. Voss," she said, a smile still tugging at the corners of her mouth, "we understand you were adopted by the Hale family at a young age. Have you ever thought about reuniting with your biological parents?" The air in the room changed. Tension snapped through the silence like a live wire. Ethan's pulse kicked into overdrive. He stiffened, lips twitching. Then the curtains behind them parted. Out walked a couple, sun-weathered skin, mismatched clothes, clumsy postures. The woman burst forward, latching onto Ethan in a dramatic embrace. "My baby," she sobbed, theatrically loud but suspiciously dry-eyed. "Mama's sorry. We were just kids, poor, desperate. We had no choice." The audience gasped. Cameraman zoomed in on Ethan's face. He froze. Completely frozen. The woman's fake cries echoed through the studio like a dirge. Behind her, the man offered a pitiful smile, as though trying to convince the world of a long-lost bond. Ethan's gaze snapped to the front row. There sat George. The old man met Ethan's eyes, then gave him a slow, satisfied smirk. A chill rolled down Ethan's spine. He got it now. This was no coincidence. George had tracked down his biological parents. He had orchestrated this entire ambush, on national television, to humiliate him. To expose that the great Ethan Voss, CEO of Hale Corporation, was nothing but an abandoned orphan picked up off the street. And in that moment, Ethan knew, his career, his image, his carefully constructed world, were all crashing down. Meanwhile, 3 months earlier, Adrian had executed his fake death to perfection. He had walked away from the Hale name, from every betrayal, every scar. Now, he stood reborn as Alex Caldwell, rightful heir to the Caldwell dynasty. His mother, the sharp but ailing Mrs. Caldwell, was recovering in a private estate on Pinecrest Hill. And with her resting, it was Alex who now called the shots. That afternoon, he stood in his office, sleek black marble floors, glass walls overlooking the city skyline. He was dressed immaculately in a charcoal gray suit, cufflinks gleaming under the soft light. His assistant stepped in quietly, almost afraid to interrupt. "Sir, tonight's gala with the Ridgeway Group. You're listed as the keynote investor. They're expecting you." Alex didn't look up right away. He was flipping through a file, fingers deft, expression unreadable. The assistant hesitated, then added cautiously. "Also, the latest press coverage on Ethan Voss. His biological family exposure went viral. His public image is collapsing." At that, Alex's hand stilled. He finally looked up. Sharp eyes, calm voice. "Let it collapse," he said. He built it on a lie. Then he closed the file, adjusted his cuff, and turned to face the night. The upcoming gala was set to be one of the year's most exclusive. Both major investors were attending, including the formidable heiress of the Prescott family. If Alex didn't show up, it would be seen as arrogance, possibly even an insult. Still reviewing contracts, Alex didn't even lift his head. "I'll go," he said casually. His assistant's eyes lit up. "You will? Excellent. I'll call the styling team now, we'll have you looking like the star of the night." Alex raised an eyebrow, his voice dry. "Don't overdo it." But the assistant was already halfway out the door, practically skipping. Alex let out a faint sigh, shook his head, and turned back to the documents in front of him. Then his screen lit up, a video call. He didn't intend to answer, but his finger brushed the glass. And just like that, Vivian's face filled the screen. Her delicate features softened the moment she saw his face. "Alex," she pouted slightly, her voice silky smooth. "Why've you been ignoring me?" She was 3 years younger, sharp as a blade wrapped in velvet. They'd met at a bar, the night he faked his death and slipped out of his old life. He'd been drinking, heavily. Vivian had made the first move. Under the pulsing glow of the bar lights, she had that kind of presence that demanded attention, long dark curls, sparkling earrings, and a face you didn't forget. It was the first time in months his heart had felt anything. One drink blurred into the next. The air thickened. And by morning, he woke next to her. Before leaving, he'd placed a bank card loaded with $200,000 on the pillow. Payment for the night, or so he thought. Vivian had only laughed. "Big spender, huh? You must have had a good time." Assuming she was just another gold digger working the club circuit, Alex didn't want entanglements. He added a $1 million check for her silence and walked away. But 3 days later, at a Caldwell family banquet, she showed up again. In designer heels and a diamond choker, she was introduced as the heiress of the rival Prescott family. Alex nearly dropped his champagne glass. Prescott and Caldwell were competitors, polite in public, icy in private. The kind of families who smiled at galas but planted knives behind curtains. From that day on, Alex dodged her every move. Until Vivian got bored. "I'm gonna show up at your house," she warned one day, "and tell your mother we slept together." Alex had frozen. "I mean it. You have 2 options, give me a title, or prepare for a scandal." "What kind of title?" he asked warily. She beamed. "Something cute. Girlfriend when we're alone. Wife when I'm in the mood." Backed into a corner, Alex had reluctantly agreed. Now, on the screen, she was all sweetness and teasing fire. "I'll be at the gala tonight," she said, twirling a loose strand of hair. "Don't pretend not to know me, okay, hubby?" Alex sighed again. This woman was a walking hurricane, and tonight, she was going to be right in the eye of the storm. Lately, Alex had been dodging all of Vivian's calls. But tonight, her face filled his screen again, radiant and smug, eyes narrowed in playful challenge. She leaned in, her voice velvet soft with mischief. "Your place or mine tonight? Pick one." Alex froze for a beat, instantly catching her drift. Though his expression remained cool, his voice dropped to a warning tone. "Vivian, don't you think this is getting excessive? I get that you're young and energetic, but moderation is a virtue." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Alex knew this look, and it made his stomach knot. He could handle her teasing head-on. What made Vivian dangerous was the way she schemed when she didn't get her way. And sure enough, she stood up. Wearing nothing but a silk nightgown. The camera caught the soft curve of her neck and shoulders, and the faint mark of a kiss just above her collarbone. Alex's ears flushed with heat. "I guess I'll just head to Caldwell Manor and show your mother how you mistreated me last night," she said sweetly. Alex had no choice. After the gala tonight, he'd have to go home with her. The event was already the talk of the city. Politicians, moguls, actors, everyone who was anyone was there. Paparazzi swarmed the entrance like bees to a bloom. But when the Prescott family's Bentley rolled to a stop, the cameras exploded with flashes. Vivian emerged like royalty. She wore a sweeping black gown, elegant and cutting. Her hair was swept into a regal updo, her features luminous under the spotlights. The subtle smirk on her lips made her seem untouchable. "Miss Prescott. Vivian, look this way." She didn't even flinch at the shouting. Only nodded faintly at the crowd. Everywhere she walked, people stopped to greet her with hushed reverence. Alex arrived a few minutes later. Vivian hadn't made it far, and the two of them ended up just meters apart on the red carpet. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Caldwell family's young heir is here." Vivian paused mid-step. Her once detached gaze shimmered with amusement. Then, turning smoothly, she stopped in front of a girl waving a notepad and casually took the pen from her hand. With a dramatic stroke, she signed her name. Alex caught it from the corner of his eye, the sly smile on her lips. She was baiting him. So, naturally, he sped up to pass her. But his polished shoes slipped slightly on the plush carpet. He stumbled forward. And a hand caught his arm. Vivian's. She looked up through her lashes, voice like silk. "Can't even walk straight anymore? Don't tell me you've been overexerting yourself." Alex shot her a sharp glare, but she just smiled, slow and mocking. Click. 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 The shutters around them went wild. He brushed it off. Until halfway through the evening, when his phone buzzed. A screenshot. From Vivian. Prescott heiress caught steadying Caldwell heir. Are they the new power couple? High society sizzles with talk of a forbidden romance. Alex stared at the headline. His vision darkened. He looked across the ballroom. Vivian was twirling her champagne glass, eyes twinkling with innocent delight, as if she hadn't just turned the entire upper crust of society into a rumor mill. She winked. He clenched his jaw. She was having way too much fun with this. If Caldwell Madam saw that headline, God knows what kind of rage she'd fly into. Alex immediately called in a crisis PR team to clean up the rumor. Then, he stepped outside to an open terrace, planning to call the old woman and feel out her reaction first. Just then, a commotion caught his attention. Not far off, a group of adults surrounded a child, pushing and shoving, their words vicious. Then someone raised a foot to kick. "Stop." Alex's voice cut through the air, calm but icy. He strode toward them, brow furrowed. The child was small, filthy, clutching an oily chicken leg as if it were life itself. Alex glanced at the adults. "It's just a chicken leg. Is that really worth laying hands on a kid?" Their faces shifted immediately. One woman, clearly the head chef, stepped forward, recognition dawning. "Sir, if it were just a chicken leg, we wouldn't bother. But this little thief's been coming around constantly. Last time he stole a whole crate of special order seafood, worth $500,000. Alex turned back to the child. She buried her face deeper, as if hoping to disappear. He sighed, piecing it together. "Have someone bring her food. As for that seafood loss, my assistant will reimburse it." Within minutes, the kitchen staff returned with trays of food. The child devoured it like she hadn't eaten in days. Alex gently rubbed her back. "Slow down. There's more than enough." Her guard started to drop. Eventually, she told him her story. Parents, gone. Grandmother, just passed a few days ago. She'd been stealing food to pay her grandmother's hospital bills. Alex felt something shift inside. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed her mouth. She flinched. "And no, don't. I'm dirty. I'll ruin your nice stuff." That look in her eyes, fearful, fragile, tugged at something deep in him. He made a decision. He was going to adopt her. That night, a nanny gave the child a bath. And only then did Alex find out. She wasn't a she at all. "I'm Kevin," the boy said quietly, gripping a towel around his skinny frame. "Grandma said if I looked like a girl, people wouldn't hurt me." Alex felt his chest ache. Without a word, he pulled Kevin into a hug. Kevin was unnaturally well-behaved. He dressed himself every morning. Folded his blanket before anyone asked. Ate sparingly, trying to prove that he wasn't a burden. Wanting to show he was easy to keep. So on the weekend, Alex took him out, to the amusement park. They sat together on the carousel. Kevin wore a blue, Little Prince outfit with Mickey Mouse ears perched on his head. In Alex's camera lens, Kevin finally smiled. Genuinely. And when the carousel slowed, he said, a bit shyly, "I want ice cream. A sweet one." Alex grinned. "That's the first time you've asked for anything. That deserves another reward." Alex held Kevin's hand as they walked toward the dessert shop in the amusement park. From a distance, Nina saw everything. She frowned, her round eyes brimming with tears. But remembering that Dad didn't like crybabies, she bit her lip hard and forced the tears back. "Daddy!" She suddenly shouted and ran toward them. Before Kevin could react, she shoved him aside and wrapped her arms tightly around Alex's leg. Alex froze, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Ow!" Kevin tumbled to the ground with a yelp. He quickly picked himself up without complaint. Even though his beloved Little Prince outfit was now stained, he didn't cry. His hands twisted together nervously as he glanced at the unfamiliar girl. Nina glared at him, her voice sharp and fierce. "He's my daddy, not yours, you little thief." The word thief hit Kevin like a slap. His lower lip trembled, and his eyes welled up. Alex's heart clenched. He quickly pushed Nina away and rushed to Kevin's side, scooping him into a gentle embrace. "Don't cry, Kevin," he said softly, shielding him. "I'm your dad and yours alone. Not hers." This time, it was Nina who froze. She stared at Alex comforting Kevin in disbelief, her small hands clenched, her lips trembling. Then the tears came, like pearls sliding off a broken string. But Alex didn't even glance at her. All his focus was on Kevin. Nina quietly edged closer, peeking up at him with tear-filled eyes. Her voice was tiny, strained with heartbreak. "Daddy. I'm crying too. Won't you look at me? Why won't you talk to me? Don't you want me anymore?" Alex stood up with Kevin still in his arms. His gaze dropped to Nina, blank and cold. "I don't know who you are. I only have one child, and that's my son Kevin. You should go back to your family, little girl." Nina's eyes widened. She tugged at his sleeve and burst into sobs, throwing a tantrum. "You are my daddy. I'm not leaving. Ethan uncle is a big bad guy, he locked me in a dark room and didn't let me eat anything. He's awful. He's a bad man." Alex's expression flickered. For the first time, he noticed the tear in her clothes, the scrapes on her legs. She really did look like a runaway child. But in the past timeline, didn't Ethan spoil her to no end? Had the course of fate changed? Even though Alex no longer considered Nina his daughter, he still picked up the phone and called the police. "Come pick up a child," he told them. "She says she ran away from home. Contact her mother, Celeste." 10 minutes later, Celeste arrived in a rush. Nina spotted her immediately and shouted with joy. "Mommy!" Celeste scooped her into her arms. Nina clung tightly to her, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mommy, let's bring Daddy home, okay? Ethan uncle. Ethan uncle is bad." Her daughter's cries were like knives slicing into Celeste's chest. She forced herself to stay composed and gently said, "Nina. Daddy's gone. He's not coming back." "Liar!" Nina shouted. "I just saw Daddy. He must be mad at me, that's why he didn't talk to me. He was playing with another little boy. I cried so loud, and he still ignored me." Celeste's heart stopped. She grabbed Nina by the shoulders. "You saw Daddy? Are you sure?" Nina nodded hard. "I'm not lying. Only bad puppies lie." Celeste's pulse pounded in her ears. So, it wasn't a hallucination that night outside the club. It was Adrian. Nina saw him too. But what did she mean? Adrian had a new child. There was no time to unravel that mystery now. Celeste rushed Nina to the security office and reviewed the surveillance footage. Sure enough, there he was, a man who looked exactly like Adrian. Celeste didn't hesitate. She immediately informed George and Martha. The next morning, Alex arrived at the company as usual. Just as he stepped through the door, someone pulled him into a tight embrace. Vivian's scent, floral, elegant, wrapped around him like a ribbon. Her body pressed softly against his, and her breath brushed past his ear. "Why didn't you show up that night?" She playfully bit the edge of his ear, just enough to make him flinch. His ears flushed red. "Had something to deal with," he replied. His voice dropped an octave under her touch, rougher than usual, a sound that sent a chill of delight down her spine. Vivian gave a sultry laugh and whispered in his ear. "Something more important than a date with me? I adopted a child." Vivian blinked. For a second, she thought she'd misheard. Then she burst out laughing, half in disbelief, half in mischief. She wrapped her arms tighter around him, teasing. "You like kids? You should have told me sooner. We could have made one together." Alex elbowed her gently, making her yelp in protest as he walked off toward his desk. His voice regained its usual calm edge. "Didn't we agree not to interfere in each other's private lives?" Vivian gave a soft, offended huff. "Oh please. This is exactly why that rule doesn't work. We don't see each other for a few days and bam, you suddenly have a kid. Next time, what? A wife pops out of nowhere and I'm just left hanging." Her words were light, teasing, but there was a sharp edge of jealousy beneath the surface. Alex raised an eyebrow. His smirk subtle, dry. "Can't say that's impossible." Alex said nothing. That alone caught Vivian off guard. She stared at him, speechless for a long moment. But then her mind kicked into gear. Alex was notoriously hard to please. Average women didn't even make it onto his radar. And when she looked around this entire circle of elites, who could possibly compare to her? Who else had her looks, her wit, her charm? Vivian, the heiress of the Prescott family, was already calculating in her head. Her schemes ran deeper than those sugar babies trying to sleep their way to status. Just then, the office door opened. Alex's assistant walked in with a cheerful look, but when he saw Vivian, his face froze. His eyes flicked to hers in surprise. It took him a few seconds to process before asking cautiously. "Miss Prescott, what are you doing here?" Alex looked up at Vivian and shot her a warning glance. Don't say anything stupid. After all, the two families were still publicly known rivals. Vivian understood right away. Her expression turned frosty and aloof, the signature look of the highborn elite. "Business," she said coolly. "Business?" The assistant blinked, confused. "Are you joining our acquisition of Hale Corporation?" The mention of Hale Corporation made Alex's eyes narrow. "What's going on with Hale Corporation?" he asked. The assistant paused. Clearly, Alex hadn't heard yet. He took a step closer and lowered his voice. "Former CEO Ethan Hale has been sent to prison." Alex's brows furrowed. Prison? That didn't make sense. In his previous life, Ethan's downfall wasn't supposed to happen for another 6 months. What had caused it to unravel early this time? The assistant pulled out his phone and opened the trending TV reunion show from a few days ago. This show is what triggered everything. Alex played the clip. It was quick, but enough to get the picture. The episode featured Ethan's birth parents showing up on set, running toward him and bursting into loud, dramatic sobs. Ethan's face went pale, then flushed red, then twisted into fury. Finally, he shoved the couple away, shouting, "Parents? I don't know these people at all." He turned on the host, voice trembling with rage. "Where did you find these random nobodies? You dare say they're my parents? I'll see all of you in court." The host, unfazed, adjusted her glasses. "Adrian, before we invited you here, we reached out to your adoptive father, Mr. Hale. He voluntarily provided a DNA sample for testing. The results confirmed, you are the son of this couple. If you still have doubts, you're welcome to conduct your own test. Our legal team is more than ready to meet you in court." At that moment, George Hale himself walked on stage, a move that stunned the audience. "Everything she said is true. I can vouch for it." With George's presence, the host's claims gained instant credibility. Ethan completely lost it and started screaming at the crew to shut the cameras off. But his arrogance had already pissed off everyone on set. Not only did the cameramen keep rolling, but he zoomed in for a close-up of Ethan's snarling face. And the uncut footage was aired in full, 0 edits. By nightfall, Ethan's story was splashed across every major news outlet. Clips of Ethan's public meltdown were turned into GIFs and memes, spreading like wildfire across YouTube and social media. In no time, he became a national laughingstock. Then came the exposés. Fake academic credentials. Embezzlement from his adoptive parents. Letting his mother die while lying about being her donor. Marrying his dead brother's wife weeks after the funeral. It was a PR disaster. Public opinion turned so vicious, someone even mailed him razor blades and a funeral photo, demanding he return all assets to George. Eventually, the lawsuits caught up to him. Ethan lost everything and was sentenced to prison. Alex wasn't surprised when he heard the outcome. The only thing that irked him? Hale Corporation. Meanwhile, Vivian scrolled through her messages and found a new one from a tabloid journalist. "Your little request. Done." She curled her lips into a small, pleased smile. "Great. Come by later, I'll let you borrow the Lambo for a week." Alex, unaware of her behind-the-scenes meddling, perked up when his assistant informed him that Hale Corporation was entering liquidation. He tapped his fingers on the desk. "Reach out to their legal team," he said. "Tell them we're willing to acquire at fair market value." On it, the assistant replied. But before leaving, he shot a quick glance at Vivian, clearly wondering what she was still doing here. Alex leaned back, rubbing his temples, until a familiar floral scent drew closer. He looked up. Vivian was already by his desk, propping herself casually on the edge. Before he could speak, she leaned in and kissed his forehead. "So," she murmured. "You really plan to acquire Hale Corporation?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "You planning to compete?" Vivian belonged to Prescott family, a powerful rival. And Hale Corporation was a juicy prize. Her family wouldn't back off easily. But Alex never mixed work with emotion. It didn't matter how entangled they were in bed, when it came to business, he wouldn't give her an inch. To his surprise, Vivian paused for a few seconds, then gave a half-smile. "I was going to fight for it," she said, eyes twinkling. "But since you want it so badly, I'll let this one slide." Alex blinked. She never gave in this easily. Vivian's slender finger traced along his eyebrow and cheek, her gaze suddenly softer than usual. "But," she whispered, in exchange, you're taking me to dinner tonight. Before he could answer, her finger pressed lightly against his lips. She leaned in close and murmured near his ear. And tonight, you're making sure I leave full. Alex's ears turned crimson. The day of the Hale Corporation acquisition. Alex didn't show up in person. Instead, he sent two of his top executives to the meeting, overseeing the entire deal remotely via a live video feed. On the computer screen, George and Celeste stepped into the conference room. The string of lawsuits had clearly taken a toll. George looked gaunt, worn down, and visibly aged. Celeste reviewed the contract carefully, then raised a pointed question. Most companies tried to take advantage of our situation, offering bottom-dollar bids. Why are you willing to pay full market value? One of the female executives smiled coolly as she gathered the documents. That was our CEO's decision. George glanced at Celeste, his thoughts drifting to the photo she had shown him not long ago, the one of the Caldwell heir. The resemblance to Adrian was unmistakable. His eyes welled up with tears. As the meeting wrapped up, George couldn't help himself. He grabbed the female executive's arm gently, his voice hoarse with guilt and hope. Would you ask your CEO if he'd be willing to meet with us sometime? Maybe share a meal? The woman didn't answer. She simply looked toward the camera. From the speaker, a cold male voice responded. That won't be necessary. The line went dead. George stood frozen. The rejection landed like a stone in his gut. He turned away, silently wiping his tears. Back at the estate, Alex closed his laptop and looked toward the bathroom. Vivian was there, wearing nothing but a black silk blindfold over her eyes, her wrists and ankles loosely bound with satin ribbon. The sight made his gaze darken slightly. Vivian, he murmured, exactly how many of these little surprises do you have? She sauntered toward him, dropped into a slow crouch at his side, and pressed a soft kiss to the back of his hand. That's for you to explore, she whispered. If you're man enough to keep up. Then, with quiet command, her hand slid up his thighs, coaxing his legs apart. Alex's breath caught. He met her gaze, or at least, the heat burning through the blindfold. At that moment, Vivian wasn't seducing him, she was claiming him. What followed was a long, feverish night. One that didn't end until the early hours of dawn, both of them left breathless and spent. The next morning, Alex was stirred from sleep by a rhythmic knock at the door. Eyes still shut, he groaned softly and shifted his sore body. He felt like he'd been run over by a freight train. He nudged Vivian's arm off his waist and reached for the sheets. From outside the door came the calm voice of the head steward. Young master, Madam Caldwell is here. The news of Elizabeth's arrival jolted Alex wide awake. He glanced at Vivian, still peacefully asleep beside him, heart pounding like a drum. He was just about to wake her when she stirred, reached out, and pulled him back into her arms. Her voice was thick with sleep and lazy affection. Babe, 5 more minutes. She didn't get to finish. Alex clamped a hand over her mouth. Vivian's eyes snapped open to find his face flushed, his voice low and urgent. Elizabeth's here. You need to stay in the room. If she finds out we... He didn't finish the sentence. Vivian raised an eyebrow, eyes gleaming with mischief. She grabbed his wrist and whispered, deliberately teasing. If she finds out we what? She already knew. She just wanted to hear him say it. Alex didn't take the bait. He slipped out of bed and started getting dressed in a rush. The more flustered he was, the more relaxed Vivian became. Even with Mrs. Caldwell's personal assistant lurking just outside the door, she stayed in bed, propping herself up on one elbow and calmly watching him get dressed. Before leaving, Alex snatched a pillow off the floor and hurled it at her in frustration. Outside the room, the butler coughed twice, trying to cover his awkwardness. Master Alex. Madam is waiting for you in the garden. I'm coming. Alex rushed out to the back garden, and there she was. A poised figure in an elegant cheapao, tossing fish food into the koi pond. Mrs. Caldwell was 50, still radiant with grace and poise. Decades of privilege sat comfortably on her shoulders. She was the kind of woman who made luxury look effortless. "Mom," Alex greeted, standing obediently by her side. She didn't look at him. Just gave a quiet and tossed away the last of the feed before taking a seat beneath the parasol. "You sit too," she said. Mrs. Caldwell rarely summoned him without notice. If she wanted to meet, she usually had someone schedule it days in advance. The fact that she'd shown up without warning meant something was definitely off. There was a long stretch of silence. Alex picked up a teacup and took a sip, hoping to ease the tension, then nearly choked on it when her voice cut through the quiet. "How long have you been seeing that Prescott girl?" Tea sprayed back into the cup. He coughed, eyes darting. Should he lie? Deflect? But before he could decide, Mrs. Caldwell continued. "No need to hide it. I'm not going to stop you. Men and women dating, perfectly normal. But of all the girls in the world, you chose her? From the Prescott family?" Her tone sharpened. "That girl's been trouble since she was in diapers. You might be ruthless in business, but when it comes to people, you're still too soft. She only needs 3 words to wrap you around her finger. I'm telling you now, end it. While you still can." Her words had barely landed when a clear, chipper voice rang out behind them. "Well, that's not very nice, talking about someone behind their back." Alex froze. He turned, slowly, already bracing for the worst. "Vivian." He felt his soul leave his body. "No. No, no, no." He jumped to his feet, stormed over, and tried to push her back toward the house. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed. "I told you to stay put. Get out. Now." But trying to move Vivian when she didn't want to be moved was like pushing a wall. Instead of leaving, she grabbed his hand, interlaced their fingers, and strolled right up to Mrs. Caldwell, her chin high, eyes steady. Mrs. Caldwell slowly lifted her gaze. Years of power and politics had sculpted her presence into something cold and commanding. She didn't need to raise her voice to make the air turn to ice. The weight of it prickled at the skin. Alex paled. "Mom. I'm sorry. I really am. It wasn't his fault." Vivian stood tall, her posture straight and unwavering, eyes locked on Mrs. Caldwell with a calm defiance. Every word she spoke rang clear, unflinching. "I'm the one who made the first move. I pursued Alex. I fell for him, deeply. I've made up my mind. For the rest of my life, he's the only one I'll ever want. If someone needs to be punished, make it me. Leave him out of it." The tension in Alex's chest, tight and trembling, suddenly eased. He turned, stunned, staring at her. She met his gaze, then gently squeezed his hand. Mrs. Caldwell narrowed her eyes, her voice sharp and icy. "So this is what the Prescott family does now? Still coming after the Caldwells like vultures?" 30 years ago, her younger brother had fallen for a woman from the Prescotts, and vanished from the family. Now her son, Alex, was being drawn away by that same woman's daughter. What the hell was wrong with that bloodline? Vivian didn't flinch. She held Mrs. Caldwell's gaze, calm and unafraid. But the words she spoke made Alex's stomach twist. "Can you blame us?" she said lightly. "Everyone in the Caldwell family is exceptional. Who wouldn't fall for one?" She let the moment breathe, then added, quietly. "Though I met Alex a long time ago." The first time Vivian ever saw Alex, he was just a boy in a school uniform, standing at the mouth of a quiet alleyway. She'd been bleeding, cornered, barely alive. Her enemies had chased her through the backstreets, and she'd thought it was the end. Then he appeared. Young. Clean-cut. Gentle eyes. His voice was calm, soothing, like a stream over stone. That day, he'd taken off his jacket and wrapped it around her wound to stop the bleeding. The scent of soap still clung to the fabric, subtle, clean, unforgettable. To this day, she could still remember it. Later, she got into more trouble, enough that Mrs. Prescott had her sent to the UK for a fresh start. By the time she came back, he was married. So she waited. Waited through the years. Waited until the day he was single again. And now that she had the chance, even if it cost her life, she wouldn't back down. Mrs. Caldwell sat in silence, processing the quiet, steady force of Vivian's words. Alex stood frozen, completely thrown. It took him a long moment before he found his voice. His eyes shimmered with a faint red tint as he whispered, "That was you? The girl who used to follow me after school?" Back when he'd first been brought home, Ethan would often sick a gang of delinquent girls on him, mocking, pushing, cornering him just out of sight. But then came her, a sharp-eyed girl with cropped hair and a "don't mess with me" stare. After he saved her once, she started showing up outside the school gates, never speaking, never asking for thanks. Just trailing behind silently, shadowing him all the way home like a quiet shield. Vivian blinked, eyebrows pulling into a deep frown. "What girl?" she said, incredulous. "I was in a private academy. We were dismissed at 3:30 sharp. You think I accidentally showed up in your alley every day? I waited for you, you idiot." Alex didn't answer. But the look he gave her, half laugh, half awe, was worth more than words. And then Mrs. Caldwell's voice sliced through the moment like ice on glass. "I don't care what strange little karmic bond you two think you have. You're a Prescott. That's enough reason for me to never let you near my son." Vivian's gaze darkened. Alex's expression sobered too. After a pause, he quietly let go of her hand. He couldn't betray Mrs. Caldwell. Couldn't break her heart. Not after everything she'd done for him. Then came the sound of metal on stone. A dagger, sleek and ornate, landed at Vivian's feet. "Unless," Mrs. Caldwell said coolly, "you're willing to pay your mother's debt." Her tone was light. Her eyes were not. Vivian's eyes dropped, not to the blade, but to the jade bracelet on Mrs. Caldwell's right wrist. Years ago, her mother, the infamous Mrs. Prescott, had stabbed that very wrist with an awl. Left it permanently weakened. So this wasn't just a gesture. Vivian understood perfectly. If she wanted in, she'd have to give up her right hand. She looked at Alex. His eyes were red, and he was already shaking his head, "Don't do it," begging her silently. Her chest ached. But next to Alex, what was a hand? "A debt's a debt," she said softly. "Let's settle it now." She picked up the knife. And in one swift motion, raised it toward her own wrist. "Don't." Alex lunged forward, throwing his hand over hers just as the blade came down. Click. The blade didn't cut. It retracted into the handle. A trick knife. They both stared at their hands, perfectly intact. No blood. No wound. Stunned, they looked at Mrs. Caldwell. She gave a quiet humph, picked up her tea, took a sip, and said coolly, "You've got guts, I'll give you that." Alex let out a shaky breath, laughing in disbelief. His hand still gripped hers as he asked carefully, "So, about the feud between our families?" Mrs. Caldwell stood, set down her cup, and walked away slowly. Her voice drifted behind her like a silk ribbon on the wind. "You can settle that after you marry her. Preferably by avenging me thoroughly." The message was clear. Approval, grudging, but real. Vivian threw her arms around Alex like she couldn't breathe without him, cupped his face, and kissed him again and again. Then she pressed her forehead to his, her voice barely above a whisper. Let's get married. Right away. I don't trust fate to keep playing nice. Alex stared at her, this fierce, reckless, incredible woman, and let out a helpless laugh. He was already hers. Watching the two of them walk away, arms entwined, Celeste was overwhelmed by a wave of jealousy she hadn't expected. That used to be her place, by his side. But she'd lost him. Nina tugged anxiously at her sleeve. Mommy. Daddy just left with someone else. Aren't we gonna go after him? Go after him? Celeste's feet felt like they were made of lead. Heavy. Unmoving. How could she chase someone she no longer had the right to hold on to? Adrian used to give her everything, his time, his love, his heart. Even after prison, even after the betrayal, his eyes still softened when they landed on her and Nina. And what had she done? She left him at his lowest. Chose Ethan when Adrian was drowning. Now he was Alex Caldwell. A new name, a new life. He stood beside someone who matched him in power, in background, in presence. And she? She had no place in that world anymore. Celeste bit down on her lip, hard. Then took Nina's hand and turned in the opposite direction. Nina, she said gently, let's let Daddy go find the happiness that belongs to him now. On the ride home, Vivian never let go of Alex's hand. She held it tightly, too tightly, as if she were afraid that if she loosened her grip even for a second, he might disappear. Alex knew exactly what was going through her mind. He let out a small sigh and smiled. I'm not going anywhere. But if you keep squeezing like that, I might lose circulation. Vivian sucked in a deep breath and frowned as she loosened her hold. Sorry. I'm just really scared. Scared of what? Our bond isn't bulletproof. We lost 7 years. That's a big gap. And if Celeste throws away her pride and tries to win you back, she trailed off, then looked out the window. What if she actually gets to you? Coming from Vivian, it was a rare admission. She was usually the composed one. Cool. Elegant. In control. He'd never seen her like this, genuinely anxious, visibly shaken. She wasn't worried about her pride. She was afraid of losing him. Alex felt a rush of both warmth and amusement. He couldn't help it. The old Adrian is gone, he said quietly. Everything he lived and died for is dust now. It's all in the past. And I, Alex, have already made my choice. He turned toward her. I choose you, Vivian. At that, some of the tension in her shoulders melted away. She turned to face him, eyes soft, voice serious. Then, can you kiss me once a day? The request was so unexpectedly childlike, Alex almost burst out laughing. He didn't answer, just shook his head slightly and started to turn away. But before he could escape, her slender fingers slipped behind his neck, and pulled him in. She kissed him. Hard. Like she was stealing the breath from his lungs. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't tentative. It was hungry, a declaration. She only let go when he genuinely started gasping for air. Her gaze was full of light mischief and quiet tenderness. If you won't come to me, I'll come to you, she said. I won't give you a single chance to run. Her voice was soft, melodic, almost dangerous in how it made his heart race. A few days before the wedding, a package arrived for Alex. He assumed it was a gift from Vivian, some new suit detail, maybe a cufflink set. But when he opened it, nestled inside was a flawless jade pendant, delicate and luminous. There was a handwritten note folded underneath. This was the heirloom pendant your grandfather gave me on my wedding day. I now pass it on to you. Wishing you a marriage full of joy and peace. Alex didn't need to guess who had sent it. His chest tightened. A complicated, bittersweet wave rolled through him. Back when Adrian needed them most, when he was locked away, drowning, they gave all their love to Ethan. Now, after Adrian was long gone, now they remembered to care. Maybe Adrian would have forgiven them. But Alex wouldn't. He quietly rewrapped the pendant and handed it off to a staff member. "Return it to George," he said simply. "Tell him the sentiment is appreciated, but the gift is too valuable. He should keep it for himself." George stared at the returned package for a long, long time. Not long after, he fell seriously ill. His memory began to fray, then slip entirely. He spent his days clutching old photo albums of Adrian as a child, stopping strangers in the hallway to tell stories no one had asked for. Sometimes he mistook other people's sons for his own. And every time, he'd break down into tears and whisper the same words, over and over. "Dad was wrong. Dad, sorry, son. Please forgive me." But none of that had anything to do with Alex anymore. He and Vivian threw what could only be called the wedding of the century. Not just because the guest list was packed with celebrities, CEOs, and global elites. Not even because every camera in the country tuned in. But because, for the first time in over a decade, Mrs. Caldwell and Mrs. Prescott, sworn enemies, sat at the same table. Two women who'd declared silent war for years were now forced into an uneasy truce, for the sake of their children. Outwardly, they smiled politely. Inwardly, daggers drawn. Alex and Vivian kept sneaking nervous glances toward the two matriarchs all night, bracing for an explosion. Miraculously, it never came. That night, in their suite, Alex tugged off his tie, his whole body aching. He felt like his bones had turned to dust. Vivian stepped up behind him, undoing her elegantly pinned hair with practiced ease. Her fingers brushed against his jaw, slow, deliberate. Her eyes were locked on him, intense, smoldering. That look made his skin crawl, in the best and worst way. He instinctively took a step back. Too late. She caught his wrist, held it tight. Before he could wriggle free, she uncapped a small bottle of essential oil and began rubbing his shoulders. Her technique was, a little clumsy. But the pressure was good. Alex's face flushed red. Vivian leaned forward, her breath brushing his ear. "What are you thinking about? Your face is burning." She grinned at him wickedly. Then, without warning, kissed him, soft, teasing, right on the lips. Her voice dipped into a sultry, playful lilt. "Honey, we've got all the time in the world tonight. No tapping out." Alex groaned internally. He should have known, Vivian didn't have a soft side. Her heart was made of obsidian. Once she had him, she wasn't letting go. Inside, laughter and warmth filled the suite. Outside, a shadow stood in silence. A woman stared up at the lighted window, at the two silhouettes wrapped in each other's arms. Her face was bone white. Her chest burned like it was being pierced by 1,000 needles. "Adrian." Celeste's voice came out as a whisper, barely audible. Anyone who saw her now, eyes hollow, mouth trembling, would have thought she'd seen a ghost. Because to her, she had. Vivian gently pulled the blanket over Alex, tucking it in just right. She pressed a soft kiss to his forehead, then rose quietly from the bed. As she stepped out, the butler handed her a printed surveillance still. A quick glance was enough. Her long, narrow eyes narrowed further, a glint of icy intent flashing in their depths. "Let's go," she said coolly. Time to pay her a visit. Under the pale moonlight, Vivian emerged from the villa in a flowing black gown that moved like liquid shadow. Her steps were slow, deliberate, unstoppable, as if the night itself parted for her. She walked straight toward Celeste. Their eyes locked. Neither woman flinched. Neither smiled. Each carried a storm behind her calm. Rage burned hot in Celeste's chest, rage so sharp it felt like a blade pressed to her ribs. She wanted to tear Vivian apart. Vivian, meanwhile, stopped just a few feet away, lit a slim cigarette, took one drag, and exhaled a stream of white smoke that caught in the wind and vanished. Behind the haze, her eyes sparkled with venomous amusement. "I was wondering why the cat wouldn't shut up tonight," she said lightly. "Turns out another stray decided to sneak onto my property." Celeste's face twisted with fury. "Vivian, you manipulative bitch," she spat. "Even if you do use your little tricks to trap Adrian, he's going to wake up one day. He'll remember what we had. He'll come back to me." Her voice cracked. "We'll be a family again. The three of us, we will be whole." She wasn't sure she even believed her own words. But she needed to say them. Needed to believe that love like theirs didn't just vanish. She had Nina. Surely, that still meant something. Vivian arched a brow, her gaze darkening to black. But before she could speak, a small voice cut through the tension behind her. "Mom?" Kevin padded sleepily toward them, hugging his little robot close, his tiny hand reaching for hers. Vivian's expression softened instantly. Every trace of hostility drained from her face like it had never been there. She bent down and scooped Kevin into her arms, voice low and warm. "What are you doing up, sweetheart?" Kevin looked at Celeste, blinking once, then turned back to Vivian. "I was scared that bad lady would hurt you." Celeste flinched. That sharp, clear look in his eyes made her feel suddenly exposed. Vivian let out a soft laugh, dangerous and victorious all at once. "You hear that?" she said to Celeste, casually rocking Kevin in her arms. "That's what our son thinks of you." Kevin, catching the rhythm, straightened up in her arms. "We should go back inside, Mommy," he said brightly. "It's windy. If you get sick, Daddy will be sad." Celeste couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had driven a dagger right through her chest. Not even Nina, her own daughter, could say something like that. Not with that much heart. Not with that kind of innocence. For the first time, she didn't just envy Vivian. She hated her. Hated that she had everything: Alex, a child who loved her, a future. Vivian didn't spare her another look, only turned slightly as she adjusted Kevin in her arms and said with casual affection. "All right, baby. Mommy will listen to you and Daddy." She walked back to the house, her black gown fluttering behind her like a banner of quiet triumph. Celeste stood there, alone in the cold night air. No warmth. No one beside her. No place left to return to. No one knew how long she stood there in the cold. Eventually, a car pulled up, headlights on high beam, cutting through the dark. The Hale family's driver stepped out, clearly uncomfortable. "Miss. Mr. Hale asked me to bring you home," he said. He hesitated. Not to embarrass the family by making a scene at the Prescotts. Celeste's jaw clenched. Vivian had set her up. She hadn't expected her to be this calculating, this ruthless. Her expression stormy, Celeste got in the car without another word. Alex and Vivian's wedding coverage dominated headlines for a full week. Every news outlet called it the wedding of the century, a lavish fusion of power, legacy, and spectacle. On Alex's birthday, Vivian spared no expense. She rented a luxury yacht, invited friends, decorated the whole thing like a floating dream. Kevin, now growing into a strikingly handsome young boy, stepped onto the stage with a violin in hand. He played a full piece, beautifully. When he finished, he walked straight to Alex, kissed his cheek, and whispered into the mic. "Daddy, I love you." His eyes sparkled with pure affection. Unbeknownst to everyone, Nina had snuck aboard the yacht and seen the whole thing. Her eyes filled instantly with tears, but she bit her lip and didn't let a sound escape. She remembered what he used to say. "Daddy doesn't like naughty kids." Later that evening, she waited near the hallway leading to the private suite. When Alex stepped out for a break, Nina ran to him and blocked his path. He looked surprised to see her, but not unkind. She held something out with both hands, a folded drawing. It was a birthday cake. Beside it, 3 stick figures stood smiling, holding hands. "Happy birthday, Daddy," Nina said quietly. "I missed you so much." Alex took the drawing, silently. She'd grown. Her baby cheeks had thinned, and her features looked more and more like Celeste's. The old spoiled glint in her eyes was gone. In its place was something softer. Calmer. He nodded once and said gently, "Thank you. Where's your family? You should head back." Nina looked down. "Mommy doesn't know I'm here. I asked the butler to bring me." Right on cue, a few bodyguards came jogging toward them, clearly panicked. "There you are, miss. We've been looking everywhere." When they saw Alex, they bowed slightly, embarrassed. "Apologies, sir. We didn't mean to cause trouble." "It's fine." Alex's tone was cool. He turned to leave. But then, Nina reached out and lightly touched his fingers. "I don't want to go back." Her voice cracked. "I know I was bad. But I'm sorry now. I'll be good. I promise." Tears welled up again. "No more candy. I won't do anything Daddy says not to. Just, please don't make them take me away." Alex felt a dull ache in his chest. He stood there, quiet, for a long moment. Then said softly, "All right. If you really want to be good." He looked her in the eyes. "Then listen to me. Go home." And with that, he gently pulled his hand away, and walked off. Leaving Nina standing alone, under the lights, still holding her drawing. After that day, Nina kept showing up at the Prescotts, again and again. Month after month. Year after year. Celeste scolded her. Even slapped her a few times out of frustration. It didn't matter. Nina kept going back. She'd sneak out, invent excuses, do whatever it took to get just a moment with Alex. Eventually, Kevin and Nina ended up at the same university. Kevin mentioned once that Nina took care of him on campus. Once, in front of a crowd, she even called him Big Brother. Vivian wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what Nina was doing, winning over the son to get closer to the father. She was having none of it. Vivian made it explicitly clear, Kevin was not to get too close to her. And even as the years passed, even as both Alex and Vivian stepped into middle age, she never let her guard down. Celeste never remarried. She lingered like a shadow on the edge of their lives, never retreating, never fully confronting. Vivian made sure she stayed exactly there. When Kevin graduated, Alex and Vivian showed up for the ceremony. Dressed simply, standing tall and proud. Also in attendance, unsurprisingly, were Celeste and Nina. They hovered nearby, watching the family pose for photos from a distance. Their expressions unreadable, except for the flickers of envy in their eyes. After a while, Nina shuffled forward, inching her way closer until she stood just a few feet from Alex, close enough to slip into a photo if she timed it right. Celeste, face tight with pride, followed and stood beside her daughter, coughing once as if to announce herself. But Alex never once looked their way. Not even a glance. That same year, George passed away. Before his death, he had all his assets transferred to Alex. The lawyer delivered a final message. "All of this is yours now. Do with it as you wish." Alex didn't flinch. He'd given 30 years of his life to the Hale family. Built everything they had. This inheritance wasn't a gift, it was earned. Still, he didn't want it. He no longer wanted anything from them. He donated every last cent. On the day of the donation, he and Vivian visited the children's home together. The media swarmed. The director of the foundation greeted them with glowing praise. Photos. Flashbulbs. Formalities. But on the ride home, none of that mattered. Everything behind them, loss, betrayal, false starts, was finally where it belonged. In the past. And ahead of them? Something brighter. The late afternoon sun poured through the car window, lighting up Alex's face. He squinted toward the sky, smiling faintly as a flock of geese soared overhead, cutting across the blue, steady and sure, heading in a single, certain direction. Vivian glanced at him, curious. "What are you smiling about?" Alex leaned back in his seat. "Just thinking," he said. "This time around. I chose right."